Hello, fantasy enthusiasts, and welcome to another episode of Discover New Worlds with Ryan D. Meier. I'm really excited today to bring in an interview I had with author R.G. Long. He came by, talked some inspirations, talked his epic fantasy series Legends of Gilia, and to celebrate the release of book 15 of book 15 in that series later this week. So we're so excited to have him. I'm sure it's a conversation you'll enjoy, and we'll see you afterwards. Welcome back, everybody. I'm here with Ronald R.J. Long. Thanks for so much for coming on.
Glad to.
It's awesome to have you. Yeah.
Yeah.
So when we first connected this morning, we kind of, I won't call it a commiserate, but
Nah.
because it's not one of those things that's so dramatic, but it's close, right?
Close.
So RG and I happen to have both have three girls that happen to be right around the same age. We just
I don't know about you.
No, go ahead, jump in.
Do you have conversations about your feelings, like, and how you feel about those feelings? Because that's what we do at our house.
Yeah, all the time. I mean, just I won't assume, but is your wife in the home as well? You guys are all just a pack together. You're the only male, or do you have some help there?
Oh no, I am the only male around this house for sure. Yeah, it's insane. Yeah. And it's great. I love it. But like, and I've got the friends who are like, man, you should try for a boy. It's like, well, okay, I wouldn't know what to do with a boy at this point.
Yeah. See, like, I'm lucky. I inherited a boy. So I have a 14-year-old stepson that I met when he was 2. So for me, like the infant stuff of a boy, though, was over. Right. So I always felt the same way. I was exactly. So for me, I missed the first 2 years of that. So my only infant experience was with girls. And I agree. It's just, and then I talk to friends and family who have just boys, and it's literally like we're living in two different worlds.
Yeah. Like I got a friend who's got 4 boys and they just fight all the time. Like that's all they do is they like physically fight. Like my girls, we talk and things like that, but no, they like, they like WWE all over the place. And that's not my experience, man.
No, me neither. It's like a cage match in those boys' houses.
Yes.
I don't know how.
Yes.
So, so first off, we're having you on because we are going to talk about the Legends of Gilia series.
Fantastic.
But what I always think is really cool is we'll dive into kind of hear some of your story and talk about some of your big inspirations, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So I want to lead off again because it's something that you and I have in common. Let's talk Dragonlance for a minute.
Yeah.
So go, please tell me about your experience with that.
Well, I actually wanted to ask you, what was your first Dragonlance novel? What was the first one you read?
I came in, I was very confused when I started reading them. They got like recommended to me, but I was lucky because I think I started on the right one, which was Dragons of Autumn Twilight. So the first of the Chronicle series, which I mean, I have read a lot of other Dragonlance. Those personally are my favorites, maybe because they're like the core canon of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so did you have a similar experience?
Absolutely not.
Okay, let's hear it.
No, so I grew up in like a really conservative home, and so there was some like, all right, fantasy is okay, but we're kind of like nervous. So like I didn't play Dungeons and Dragons until 2 years ago because that was like, no, okay, that's the devil. We don't do that mess. But there were like, my mom was a librarian, so books were kind of like on that cusp of like, no, I think books are going to be okay. And so I think they bought for me, just like they said, okay, hey, this is a book in the Dragonlance series and it looks exciting. So my first Dragonlance novel was Kinder, Gully Doors, and Gnomes, Volume 2.
No way.
So all the short stories and all the weird stuff of like Tass and there's kids. And I'm like, okay, well, this is kind of cool. What the heck is going on? Like, not an idea. That was my first Dragonlance book.
And those are one of the companion books that, like, if you had no experience, I can't imagine you, right? Like, you have to kind of figure this all out and puzzle it out on the run. Like, the characters aren't familiar or anything.
Oh, yeah, it was rough. So then eventually got around to the Chronicles and was like, oh, this is what's going on. Okay, that makes sense now.
So I know this can be a debated topic. Favorite character?
Oh, that's so I'm losing her name right now, but who was the tavern girl?
Tika.
Tika.
Yes.
So like honestly, like I love, everybody loves wrestling because he's, dark and brooding. Everybody loves Cameron because he's the ultimate good guy, Strum, all this kind of stuff. I'm in. But I love Tika's arc, man. She's like, I'm a girl, I don't know anything. To like, I'm gonna mess you up. Like I was a fan of Tika, of how she like was all of a sudden was like, no, I'm gonna learn this stuff. I'm gonna go. Like, I'm in.
Yeah, they did that with a couple arcs that I thought was really good. I thought the Elven Princess,
yeah,
I mean, she goes by so many different shortened names, but the Laura Lanthius, I thought she had an interesting arc because you kind of pick up with her where she's like immature and whiny and kind of spoiled from her life of privilege. So I thought that was interesting. And my personal favorite's not Tannic, excuse me, Tanis.
Tanis,
I like the conflict and the
for sure.
This the inner trying to find his way to fit in the world. That was always impactful for me.
Yeah, who am I? I belong in two separate camps, right? And neither one really accept me for who I am. Yeah, that's a powerful thing right there.
It's beautiful. And what I loved is, and it's funny because you kind of talked about the series being like you kind of had to ease into it with your family background. I found this series to be one that I think like are excellent stories for teenagers to read. I think the morality in it is amazing. So I think that's huge. What else sticks out in your mind about that?
My oldest is a bookworm is really what sticks out in my mind. And so I'm like trying to like throw books at her because she's at that point where like not the preteen, but like the kid section is like, it doesn't hold her attention. We went to the library, let's see, like 3 days ago, and she read all the books that she already got. And so we are already into like the adult fiction, like just to hold her attention because she devours books. So it's, I love it, but it's also like me going on to be like, okay, what's this series? Can you read this yet? And so there's a little bit of the conservative dad in me of like, well,
sure.
Right, there's some things that I'm cool with you reading, all this stuff, but there's other stuff over here that like, maybe I'm not. She actually read a series. She read the Kingdom of Ash series. And like looking back, that was not a good parenting move because there were some things in there like, oh, I wasn't ready for you to experience that, but here we are. Okay, great.
Yeah, no backing out at that point.
Yeah. And so, honestly, with books and with Dragonlance, I love it because it is so like, you're right. It's things like it's able for anybody to get in there and read it. I think it's good for, like I said, my kids, my 11-year-old, because I was about that age, like middle school, when I started diving into Dragonlance and things like that. So honestly, I love it for the introduction into fantasy. Like The Hobbit bored me to tears, man. Like, and I know as a fantasy author, that's like not the thing to say, but it was rough. Like I picked it up and I put it down. Like it was not my book. And so Dragonlance is what got me into the genre, right?
Yeah, and I feel the same way. Not completely about The Hobbit. Now I'm assuming you recently tried to read that, or fairly recently, or did you try when you were younger?
Around. Oh, you did? We went back around.
Oh, yeah. Yes. No, that's what I was wondering. So I actually just reread The Hobbit with my sister as like a little like kind of book project for her and I. And I did look at it a little differently, but I think that at this juncture, epic fantasy has changed a lot since then, right? So
totally.
Yeah, like the way we write, the stylistic pieces of it is so much different than the 30s, of course, right? So it does. It ages differently. I won't say it ages poorly, just differently.
Yeah, and you've got a great, example of your on your shelf there with in the 90s and stuff when we were growing up, we had Robert Jordan kind of redefining the genre with the Wheel of Time series.
Sure did.
Right. And so now we've got Brandon Sanderson taking, I feel like, that genre to the next level with Way of Kings and the Stormlight Archive, because holy crap, that's a phenomenal series that he's got going on right now. And like, it's a great time to be a nerd, right? Because you
Oh,
know,
the
we
best.
we finished up, like it or not, we finished up Game of Thrones series. Amazon is now doing this whole thing where like, are they going to redo the whole Lord of the Rings kind of thing?
Yeah.
Like, so like being nerdy is in the fantasy sense, like it's a
Yeah.
great time for that because of all this stuff that's coming out right now. That's no, this is what fantasy can be. And it's fantastic. I love it.
Oh, me too. The Witcher is another great
Yeah.
example that's just grabbing people's attentions, and
Absolutely.
and what I hope, and I think we're seeing it translate, is we're bringing new readers who maybe were reading thrillers or
Yeah,
mystery novels, and they're catching on with these shows and loving them, and hopefully bringing them in. That's what it's all about.
absolutely.
Now,
Absolutely.
so it's funny. So you mentioned only picking up D&D maybe for the first time a couple years ago.
Yep.
What about other tabletop board games? Do you have some experience with some of this? Is there something you're into?
Oh yeah, I'm actually looking at right now my new Warhammer Age of Sigmar box set that I've got over here. I
Very
am a
nice.
huge Warhammer fan. So like that was another thing that my parents were cool with because it wasn't necessarily like you're pretending to be somebody else and
Yeah.
you're a sorcerer, but it's like, no, you've got an army. All right, fine, whatever. And so
Yeah.
and so Warhammer was something I got into when I was a little kid, again, middle school, that same age. And I've just been consistently playing it all the time. And so now I play with my kids, which is great.
Absolutely.
And so I'm looking at their new Dominion box set that like super nerd. I like pre-ordered, like I'm getting in on this one. And so and no, and that was one of the ones for me. Again, because of the genre that I write and the world, like I love the fantasy setting of it. I I'm still getting into the new lore with Age of Sigmar. I don't like hate it. There's a lot of the community who are like, this is the worst thing ever. But like I do really appreciate the older Warhammer world lore.
Yeah, sure.
And so like because I'm the everyman type of guy, like I played the Empire, just like, hey, you've just got tons of humans marching against whatever. Like, and so because that's I think the kind of stories I write and the kind of stories I like to read.
Yeah.
I've really got into Warhammer and it's a fun hobby. Like I'm terrible at painting them. I lose like every game I play, but it's a blast. Like I love it. It's a lot of fun.
It's about the journey, not the destination.
Absolutely. And I will make sure that you have a good time as you stomp me while we play. Like that's what it is.
So I do want to hit video games, but one last thing on Warhammer.
Yeah.
Could you describe? So I'm someone who's never played. I'm familiar
Sure.
with it, of course, but
Mhm.
how would you, for somebody who's played D&D and a handout of other tabletops,
Yeah.
does Warhammer have something about it that just is it more of a nostalgia love, or does it have some differences that you feel like fit with something you like? Because I know that they play style is fairly similar, right?
Yeah. So with Warhammer, so I haven't played the Warhammer RPG. I've only played the Warhammer tabletop game.
Right.
The thing about it that I liked, and I think what they're doing right now, though, which is really cool, is they kind of have these fantasy armies that are your kind of the dream that you had of, man, wouldn't it be cool if like I could be this side. And so like right now they have like their guys encased in armor who is like the entry Stormcast Eternals. And you just think like, what if you were just like ridiculously powerful and you had like all this armor and you were like beating up all the bad guys? Yeah, that'd be awesome. And so you've got that. But then you've got, well, what if you had elves who were like, could talk to fish and like ride on fish? And what if you had dwarves who were like, I don't care, I'm gonna not wear anything in a battle and carry two swords and have flaming red hair, and so
Sure.
it kind of hits on all of those what if fantasy genres. You're like, that'd be really cool if you had that, and they've got those. And so
Yeah.
the idea of you going, no, I am controlling my fantasy like army, and I'm getting a chance to like put it on the tabletop in the field. For me, that's just cool. Like just getting a chance to take those what ifs and be like, this would be neat. And yeah, it's a long game. It's not going to go as long as your D&D session.
Sure.
But it is going to take up some time. They did a good job of like making the rules less complicated. they got really complicated and they brought it back down. And so I think we're in a good sweet spot right now. But I don't know. It's just, for me, it's just a blast. It's a lot of fun to play and watch and be a part of.
That's really neat. I will have to check it out just so I'm more familiar with it. Because, the time that with tabletops, at least recently, has been a little D&D for me and not even that much of that. So,
yeah.
And then, that kind of leads us into some video game inspirations. So
absolutely.
Lay it out for us.
No, I am. I'm the old school Final Fantasy guy. Like, I really, really dove into what's American Final Fantasy 3 and in Japan Final Fantasy 6 for the Super Nintendo.
Sure.
Because that was when, again, growing up, definitely the nostalgia there of like, wow, this is a really great story. And I just remember the story of it, of Final Fantasy 6 specifically, and then kind of going out from there, finding Final Fantasy 2 funny. Final Fantasy 2 in America, Final Fantasy 4 in Japanese releases, whatever.
Yeah,
that just had a really great story of good versus evil, light versus dark. Who am I in my past versus who am I going to be? And then Final Fantasy 7 came out, and it was like, what is this? And fantastic video game. The reason there is a PlayStation 4 in my house is because of the Final Fantasy 7 remake. Which,
how good was it?
Oh, phenomenal! I had my doubts.
I was worried too. That was one of my favorites from childhood, and blew
me out of the water. I think what they did with exploring the city of Midgar more was what I wanted from Final Fantasy VII originally, to be able to see the more of the city, the gritty parts. And that was great. Like all these side quests that some people online were bashing, I was in. I was like, no, I want to see this more. And so it was really fun. So yeah, the story of the JRPG is really what got me into video games. Just because you could take this video game, sit down and play it for 30, 40 hours and just be so invested in these characters and so invested in the story that you're like, no, I've got to see this to the end, right? And so that was another part, with all the lore of Dragonlance, all the lore of Warhammer, all the story of video games. That's what dove me into loving and appreciating stories and starting to write my own. In fact, even there's a program called RPG Maker.
Okay.
I got into, I think the first one I ever had was RPG Maker 95, which dates me a little bit, and shows was just like, hey, you can make your own RPG, which for me was cool to make a video game, but also cool to tell a story.
Yes.
And that's how I got into writing and crafting stories, was making video games, realizing that no, I want to tell a story with this. And so that's how I kind of began to get into the idea of crafting a story and telling stories and things like that.
That is cool, because I think that the immersion behind video games is the key, right? And then the characters, I'll admit it, the remake made me cry, man.
Oh man,
it was unbelievable. The last 5 hours of that game is incredible. So
you mean that one boss fight, that last 5 hours, right? That one boss fight.
You're right. You're right, because the boss fight was forever. So you're right. It was even probably, I'm even talking about going back to maybe even that final climb up the building. It's just brutal, but
that was great.
It's great. And, it'll take us 10 years to get to the end of it because, they're taking their time, but it'll be so worth it to have games like that.
Yeah, but now I have to buy a PlayStation 5 to keep up with it.
Me too, yeah.
The worst. Darn you, capitalism.
So let's talk about your book, right? We talked about some inspirations.
Yeah.
The series now at 15 books.
Yeah. So as I'm doing this interview, in the back of my head is, my book's due tomorrow. And so that's in my head. Yeah. Book 15 due tomorrow for my pre-orders. And man, this has been a wild ride. So if you go and look at Sword of Rune, it says on Amazon that it was published in 2016, but really my writing journey began around 2013. Because I was a young writer who didn't know what the heck I was doing. And so started writing a book for NaNoWriMo. That was
very good.
Got me writing. And published 1, 2, and 3, had a blast doing it. And then I decided, kind of like Dragonlance, I was like, okay, I'm going to take the same characters, but like put them in a different place with some different stuff, and published another 1, 2, and 3 in a different setting, but really it was still chronologically going on. I had readers really confused. And so I had a buddy kind of take me aside, another author, would say, hey man, your books are chronological. Put them in a dang series. I'm like, yeah, you're right. And so rebrand, reamp everything, renamed the books actually even to what they are right now.
Yep.
And launched them in 2016. And that's just been blowing and going ever since. So now, yeah, I've got 15 books written, and holy cow, thank you. I appreciate that. That's what I decided in my stubborn little brain. When I started writing, was like, you know what? I want to write a big old world. I want 5 continents, and each of those continents is going to have a trilogy, and each of those trilogies is going to have a smaller story arc that's going to go into a big, larger story arc, because I have problems.
And you like to self-punish, apparently.
Oh, apparently so. It's been rewarding. Like for me, it's been a blast, especially to hear from readers who say they're loving the story, they're pre-ordering the last book, all this stuff. Like that's great. Like I'm into that. Yeah. But yeah, I definitely punished myself a little bit when I started this journey. Like literally writing the first paragraph, thinking I'm going to write 15 of these. Like, way to go, good job, Ronald.
Yeah, and talk about like a long-term commitment to yourself, because once you're into it, you want to keep telling the story so it's finished, right? Absolutely. You can't take your foot off the gas and leave people hanging. So
absolutely, yeah. And so it's been. I'm a bit behind schedule where I originally planned to be. Life comes at you, right?
Always does, yeah.
But the fact that I'm finishing it this summer for me is this huge personal accomplishment. So, and for me, I can even say, hey, read my series. It is a complete series. Oh man, as an author, that warms my own soul, just to be able to tell a reader, yeah, I have a complete series. It's done. You're good. Here you go. Here it is. I'm
waiting for that. I'm not there yet. So I can only imagine what that feels like. That's a beautiful thing.
I'll let you know on Friday when I when I hit that button.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Now I want to point out for a reader. So your books look like they're in Kindle Unlimited, correct?
They are Kindle Unlimited. Yep.
Now the other thing I'll point out is you have a super trilogy of trilogies, right?
Yes.
That's up there.
Mm-hmm.
So why don't you just tell our readers a little bit about it? Because I know a 15 book series probably for somebody to jump in who's ready to consume. I mean, talk about being able to jump into a story and live there.
Yeah. Yeah. So, as I write, I'm realizing I want readers to be able to know that they're getting for one thing, bang for their buck when they buy my book. And so you can buy the original book, which some people still do, like just buy book 1, which is great. But after I completed writing book 12, I was like, well, wait a second. Okay, so if a reader's at that point, I had like trilogies 1 as a set, trilogy 2 as a set, and trilogy 3 as separate sets. Yep. I was like, okay, well, that's a pretty good investment. I was like, no, I want a reader to like really get into the world, to really have the characters all in. And so that's when I put books 1 through 9 into this mega triple omnibus, right? And I was like, okay, no, this is how I want readers to really experience and dive into the story, so they can be, like you said, fully immersed in it. And you know how some readers are, blasted out in a weekend too. It's like, okay, guys,
sure
really. And so what I did with that was say, at that moment, I was just releasing, 10, 11, 12. I was just releasing book 13 when I put that one up, because I wanted somebody to get into the series to know that they'd have a lot to do, but also give them that chance to, okay, no, there's more here. Like there's more to read even after this omnibus. And so for me, putting that together was giving readers a chance to just have that giant epic experience, right? Yep. And then to be able to say, okay, there's even more to this world now. So for me, that was just a blast putting that together. And as an author too, it's been really helpful to steer people towards my books, because if they see an ad that's for 1 book, like, maybe I'll check it out. I see an ad book for 9 books. They're like, all right, now you have my attention.
It's the way ebook readers especially are, right? We've just seen that.
Yeah, I still have that one guy who keeps emailing me. It's like, when is this book going to be in paperback? Like, look, bro, I'm working on it. Give me some time.
Yeah, exactly. Well, hey, you know what? We got to give lots of love to the paperback lovers too, right?
No,
That's you got.
they're amazing.
Yeah, it's just, but it is funny because we are. I mean, the industry is just moving in that direction. You know.
Yeah, and so like you said, you've got some really nice paperbacks behind you, and I've got my paperbacks on my shelf too. For an author, it's really cool to like hold my physical book and be like, yeah, this
For
is awesome.
sure. Yeah.
But no, I do not own a lot of paperback fiction. Like it
Yeah.
all can be read on my little phony phone here, and so like we're done, right? So it's great for libraries because you don't have to
Yes.
like dedicate half of your house to books, which is nice.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there is that feeling of no, no, no. I want this one in paperback, right? Like I want to read this one here.
That's why you see the Brandon Sanderson
Yep.
hardbacks behind me. Is that
Yep.
I'll never read them probably because I have it on ebook and audiobook. So, it'll likely never happen, but they're
No,
there
but
because I had to have them.
I feel that. I have yet to actually read Way of Kings. I've listened to the whole thing. It's phenomenal.
Yep.
The audio, the narrators are fantastic.
It's a magical story. That one in particular, the whole series has been good,
Yep.
but that one in particular is great.
Oh, definitely.
So,
Man.
so before I let you go,
Yeah.
any last words for Legends of Gilia, our audience? I mean, big congratulations from us about finishing the series this week. That's amazing.
Oh, thanks, man. No, I have more self-punishment lined up for me. I've got
Good.
I am the guy who loves new projects. And so I
Good.
continue to have projects and things like that. So somewhere around book 9, it was like, wouldn't it be cool if there was like even more to this world? And so I have currently on my little hard drive another 15 book series loosely planned out of 2000 years before the events of this series. And so what we're now discovering will be basically the end of an age, kind of like the third age in Lord of the Rings or things like that.
Yes.
This is what we're in now in the books is the end of an age, and what I hope to explore in Origins of Gilia, which would be an earlier book, would be like the beginning of the age before this. So, glutton for punishment or just really loves a good story. You can choose which one of those two it is, but that I've got that coming. So that's in the back of my head, and I'm actually really excited. As much as I love my characters and love my story and I love the arc that I'm going to be able to complete, there's definitely some excitement in me about starting a new project. So I've got all that stuff kind of lined up and thinking, all right, as soon as I hit publish here, what am I going to do next?
Well, you can't stop, right?
Can't stop.
Writing is one of those things that do it every day or do it, work it into your routine as often as possible and just keep on trucking.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Ronald, thank you so much for coming today, everybody. Legends of Gilia, get out there, take advantage of a great omnibus to get into it. And then you get to be one of the first, if you get moving on that this weekend, you could finish it up next week. So that's a wonderful thing.
Hey, Ryan, thanks so much for having me on, man.
Take care now. Thank you.
See ya.
I had a lot of fun having Ronald on. We had a lot in common as far as inspiration, so it's always good to be able to chat about things that are close to your heart. As you heard him say, new book, Legends of Gilia, book 15, out now by the time this video launches, so please get out there. Check it out. If you haven't read any of RG's stuff, a great place to start is that triple omnibus with books 1 through 9. So get on Amazon, read it for free with Kindle Unlimited, or check it out there. I think it's $3 for 9 books, and it'll be a story you won't be able to get yourself out of. So enjoy that, and until next time, get out there and discover new worlds.